Assalamu alaikum, my name is Syed Mohammad Awais and you're watching Sports Extra on PTV World. And first of all, on behalf of PTV World, a happy new year to all of you. Pakistan versus Australia, one of the games to watch on, a third test match to be played on in Sydney on the 3rd of January. It's one of the important test matches for Pakistan because if you look at the track record of Pakistan cricket, it has not been good in the Australian conditions. Whether you talk about the 14 test matches, what Pakistan has played in Sydney. Looking forward to have some changes in the Pakistan squad. There are news that Saim Ayub might be included as an opening department, or if you talk about the spin bowling unit, Ibrar, one thing was good that he is bowled all over his quota in the practice session. Whether it's an important thing to watch on whether Ibrar would be the part of the Pakistan team or not in the coming test match. If you will talk about the other thing, Pakistan versus New Zealand T20 squad has started practice in Lahore, where today a scenario-based match was played. One of the shocking things for me was that Ahmed Shahzad not been included in any Pakistan Super League, and he was one of the top scorer today. He scored around 30 runs in the 18 balls, and if I just recall, I mean, people were just scolding, you would say, the management for having Mohammad Haris the way he was scoring in the practice match, and even in the practice session he looked in a good nick. It's a totally, if I see the Pakistan squad which has been announced for New Zealand, you have got Azam Khan over there, you have got 3 wicket keepers. Let's see who gets the call over here for the Pakistan team. But it's an important T20 series because Shaheen Shah Afridi is going to lead it, and Pakistan has got the T20 series against England, then you got the Pakistan Super League, then the Irish series, and the World T20 6 months away to where Pakistan has to play his first match, not yet announced, but against India in New York. If we talk about David Warner, there's a retirement from David Warner from the ODI cricket. He has already announced from the Test cricket, but now he retires from the ODI cricket. If you just watch it overall around the world, I mean, it's one of the interesting things which I do want to discuss with my panel, that many of the cricketers now, they're retiring slowly from the ODI cricket when they're at the peak over here. He has played only 161 matches for Australia, and I was shocked to hear that he's retired from the Australian side. Is one of the players who has changed the Australian dilemma, especially of the opening department. When they talk about the test matches, he has totally changed the dilemma of the test matches too. He's even told that he might be available for 2025 World Champions Trophy, which has to be played in Pakistan. If the Australian team wants, he will be available for Australia. Lastly, talking about Junaid Khan, makes a comeback for the Pakistan team. He's been selected as the under-19 bowling coach for Pakistan under-19 team, and if you talk about previously, he has served even as a head coach for the Islamabad region. A lot of cricket experience he has, and one of the finest bowlers ever known by the Pakistan cricket. Unfortunately, his career was cut short, I would say, but one of the finest bowlers what an under-19 player actually wants as a role model for the bowling unit, I would say. I've joined by 3 guests in the studios. I've joined by Malik Usman Ahmed, cricket analyst, and Saad Inam as a cricket analyst, and Rizwan Haider as a cricket analyst. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for this. Usman bhai, Pakistan versus Australia is a 3rd test match, and looking at the track record, like I told you, I mean, it has not been that good for Pakistan. How do you rate the 3rd test match?
I think Sydney is one ground where Pakistan would fancy their chances if they have any chances whatsoever. If you look at the previous history as well, considering Sri Lanka, India, Pakistan, and all the Asian teams that have been touring Australia, Sydney is one cricket ground where they can fancy their chances. They play good one days over there, and they're doing pretty okay in the Sydney test as well. So this could be one good chance for Pakistan to show what they are made up of, and Melbourne test was not a fluke. I think they played a good test match in Melbourne. Had they taken their chances, I think Pakistan could have won that test match. And this could be a chance for them to regroup and bring out their best if they have yet to show their best. I hope they have yet to show their best. And I think the Sydney test is going to tell a lot about where this Pakistan team is heading. There has been a lot of talk about cricket in media. I think it is high time now they do something on the ground itself, and they need to make some brave calls as well. They have to drop Imamullah. I think he's struggling in this Australian tour, and they need to get an attacking player, and they need to up the ante while batting, and they need to take the game to the Australians. I think in Melbourne, when the ball was doing a bit, they did show what they are made up of. But once this is the problem with this Pakistan side, not this Pakistan side, in the yesteryears as well, that once you get the opposition by the scuff of the neck, you shouldn't be releasing them, and that is what Pakistan did. Adding 16 for 4, it was done and dusted for the Australian, more specifically when they got a chance off Mitchell Marsh. Mitchell Marsh has been one of the best players for Australia in 2023, and dropping him actually cost us the game. And when the chances do come to Pakistan, they have to take those chances if you have to beat this Australian side. Mind you, they are the one-day world champions. They were recently T20 world champions. They are also the current test world champions. So this is a team to beat, and at their home, they are Lions.
Sadhana, like Usman bhai just mentioned on, I mean, if you talk about Australia, one mindset what you need is that you need to be aggressive against Australia if you want to win against them. Do you see any changes in the Pakistani side? Because Pakistan is not known to take many, I would say, improvised decisions. Getting your young player as Saim Ayub in the test squad, will it work for Pakistan?
I mean, given the fact that understanding how tough Australians are in terms of how Mr. Usman was just mentioning, that they're world test champions and even the World Cup champions, this isn't like a small challenge for a new Pakistani team that's going under a new captain. So obviously there were challenges, and obviously understanding that when you create a team that has to, prove its mettle, obviously coming up to a great challenge like Australia, there needs to be some set of chemistry that needs to be played out. So I would obviously understand the way that they carried themselves. I mean, even understanding after the first test into the second test, the fight was there. Obviously, there were few opportunities that they dropped, and that's what cost the match to Pakistan, dropping Mitchell Marsh at that time. I mean, 16 for 4, there's always a one-off chance you could have Australia by that time. So I think a more attacking sort of mindset by Shan Masood. I mean, Shan Masood's individual capacity, his individual performance by scoring 250s on a ground like this, because there was, in this entire match, there wasn't a single century played by any team. There wasn't a single century made. So, I mean, the situations and the conditions were tough, but still understanding that Shan Masood also has to adapt to this aggressive mindset of this field placement as well. I mean, you could see how Pat Cummins were playing with 5 slips at one time as well. So that is the kind of aggressive mindset that you need, not only by taking the team into the match, it's always by being in field aggressive as well. You need to have to take those decisions as well. And with what Mr. Usman was mentioning about dropping Imam ul Haq, I 100% agree with that. I think you need that reshuffling. Saima, you bring him in by instead of Imam ul Haq. And Abdullah Shafiq had a 62 in his first innings. I think there's some more bowling advantage in Melbourne rather than compared to in Sydney. I think you could see a lot more runs coming out from the opening department if you have Abdullah Shafiq and Saima Ayub both.
Oh, Rizwan bhai, I know, because it's one of the topics which is one of the most heated up topics, that you need to change your opening department. The Pakistan needs to be aggressive. The intent should be there. Shan Masood has shown you intent. I remember when the test series was going to start, when I was speaking to you off air, there was a video of Imam ul Haq where he was playing the shots and he had 2 to 3 nicks on the slip cordon area, and the people started saying Yalla khair kari, because the test match is on the way. Is it I know Pakistan is not brave enough. The previous history says that you don't make much shuffles in your opening department, but I guess this is the right time because it's a Sydney wicket, a batting track, and Saim Ayub, I guess, would be a great opponent against Australia with Abdullah Shafiq.
Well, I wouldn't say Sydney is a batting track. Sydney is one of those pitches where the spinners get a lot of help. Sydney is the only wicket in all of SENA where the highest wicket taker is Shane Warne with 64 wickets. Then you've got Stuart McGill with 55, 54 wickets. And at number 4, you've got Charlie Turner in the 1800s, and then Nathan Lyon with 44 wickets. So, but is Pakistan equipped, first of all, with the spinners? I don't think we are. We were lacking in having quality fast bowlers in the first match for WACA, for Perth. We didn't have good quality pace attack in Melbourne, and now when the spinning department comes in, we are short here as well. As far as the openers are concerned, I think both my friends Saad and Usman make valid points. Pakistan did try and fight in Melbourne. Pakistan did make an effort. There was a bit of intent coming in. But when it comes to Imam ul Haq, I mean, you know, a person who's got 3 test hundreds all in Rawalpindi. You know, you keep saying, you know, people are homegrown players who do well at home and some don't do well abroad. Imam ul Haq hasn't even done well in Multan, Karachi or Lahore. He's only a flat track bully at Rawalpindi. So if you're carrying him for 25 test matches because he's got 300s in Rawalpindi, then it's the problem lies with the team management. They haven't been able to identify the talent. They haven't been able to identify his weaknesses. He's a batsman with very, very limited ability. And we have to, the sooner you get rid of people like that, the better.
We're joined by Ali Abbas, cricket expert on Skype. Ali, if you talk about the Pakistan team changes, I mean, for the last test match, it's an important test match, the third test match. If you talk about Imam ul Haq versus, you know, there has been talks that he needs to change on. What do you see about the change?
Absolutely. I think Imam ul Haq has to go. My fellow panelists make some really good points, and I agree with Rizwan bhai over there. My problem is not with Imam ul Haq. Test cricket has changed with the introduction of the World Test Championship now. you need a player who can do well home as well as away, because previously Test cricket was just about playing 100 Test matches and then you would be judged by your records. Now Test players will be judged by how many World Test Championships they won. And if you look at the future series, we're playing in Sydney right now. Then we have a Test series at home against Bangladesh. Then we have a Test series at home against England. And then we're traveling to South Africa next year on Boxing Day. So Imam ul Haq might get a few centuries against Bangladesh, but we all know what's going to happen to him on those bouncy pitches in South Africa playing a Boxing Day test. So the World Test Championship is not over, and I'm pretty confident Shan Masood, who has a good relationship with Saim Ayub, who's played with Saim Ayub in the domestic circuit recently in the Qaid-e-Azam Trophy, I'm sure he's going to bring him in. And no disrespect to Imam ul Haq, some players are just suited to certain conditions, but because of the introduction of the World Test Championship, you have to take all of these away test series very seriously. And this Sydney test, I mean, a lot of people would call it a dead rubber. You saw the squad that the Australians announced. It's a completely unchanged squad. Pakistan is still not out of the World Test Championship, and with Shan Masood leading the team against England, leading the team against Bangladesh and Pakistan, and then taking the team hopefully to South Africa by the end of this particular year, there's still a lot to play for. And if a change has to be made, it's now. So I think probably if Abrar is fit, he would be the first person to come into the team in place of a fast bowler, because like Rizwan Bhai mentioned, because of the conditions in Sydney. And the other one has to be Saim Ayub. You need some quick runs on top. And let me tell you one thing, a lot of people are criticizing Abdullah for losing his wicket. Abdullah had around 8 runs off the first Stark over when you were chasing 300 something in Melbourne. After that, Imam played a maiden against Josh Hazlewood, where he missed a couple of scoring deliveries. Once you have someone like Saim Ayub going at a decent run rate from the other end, you're going to see a better Abdullah Shafiq as well, a more resolute and compact. And like I said, no disrespect to Imam, he had a decent career, but this team is moving forward now. This team is playing with the new way that Shan Masood has implemented, and I don't see Imam ul Haq fitting in that, with all due respect.
I would say many of them say the same thing, that the Pakistan really need to have a change. But if you talk about Abdullah Shafiq, I was just going through his track record. He's got around average of 47 or 48 runs per the average. One of the averages which suits a test match batsman, and he's shown that how capable he is, especially against the spin bowling option. If you look at him, I mean, the use of the feet, what he has got, it shows that he's one of the batsmen who can actually turn around the table for Pakistan in the opening department.
Yeah, I think he has an excellent temperament and he's very young, and there is a lot of good things being talked about him, not just from the Pakistani camp, but also from the opposition as well. So that tells a lot about him, but he hasn't has the most fruitful of tournament of the series in this series against Australia. This has not been his ideal too so far, and we can all agree that a couple of his dismissals were very soft dismissals, and I think he has to learn that very quickly, because the knife that is on the neck of Imam ul Haq can very soon turn to him as well. And Imam ul Haq, for that matter, what my colleague was talking about is 300s in Rawalpindi. If I'm not wrong, I think 2 of his 100s have come in a single test match. And that is one of the reasons that when you change avenues, forget about the country, and someone who is not performing and still fancied playing 25 test matches, that tells a lot about how much trust the management has shown in him, but he has not fired yet. We always talk about our management to be very fickle-minded, and they just keep chopping and changing. For once they have given an opportunity to someone they thought has a lot of talent. He has done well in one day, 2020 has been okay, but in test he's struggling, and my boy is struggling a lot. And for that matter, Abdullah Shafiq's place for the time being is pretty much solid. And with him, if there is a player like Saim Ayub and he can get going from the first ball or from the first couple of overs, I think that is going to do a lot of wonders. I would like to talk about an incident in the Melbourne Test when Adam Gilchrist on air said that during my playing career, I experienced that if you go 3 overs consecutively via maiden overs, the wicket is around the corner, and that very ball, Abdullah Shafiq lost his wicket. And there were a lot of talks about Adam Gilchrist talking about his experience. That is how these Australian teams set up. That is how this captaincy is all about. That is about
rightly pointed up over here, but Saad Bhai, if you just look at the Pakistan dilemma, I mean, especially the Australian mindset, it's that they play 1 over dot balls. Second over, they play aggressive. I mean, they just cover that average what they have lost in the previous over. But if you talk about the Australian mindset or Australian temperament, they would go into shallow if you're aggressive against that. That means both the ends need to score runs. They at least need to score runs, run a ball. But if Imam ul Haq isn't scoring runs, obviously that pressure continues to Abdullah Shafiq. And that's where Pakistan loses the wickets.
I think essentially what Mr. Usman was trying to say is that once when you're in field and you try to actually start understanding the gameplay the opposition is trying to play, then only you could come up with contingencies. And this is something that Shan Masood actually lacks as per being the new captain of the team. And essentially, if you understand the idea of how these players are performing onto their preparation, even Pat Cummins coming in. I mean, you see him winning the Test Championship. It wasn't a fluke. He won the World Cup. It wasn't a fluke. They came back in the Indian World Cup with that mindset too. They adapted to those situations and conditions, as I was earlier discussing with Usman Bhai as well during the World Cup session, that no foreign team with the likenesses and with the facilities and with the sort of temperament like Australia, England and New Zealand has adapted to the situation and conditions. Like, let's say the wickets of Dharmashala pitch, and there were a lot of complaints by the English players as well, and there were a lot of complaints from the New Zealand players as well. But the Australians, they didn't complain about it. They adapted to the situation and they started performing, and they went back onto it again. So this is the sort of mentality and mindset that you need to have as the team. But the fickle moment, that the most key prominent point that Pakistan needs to really exploit and try to become better at, that is the shuffling of the Australian cricket team as well. Let's say, for instance, if you bring in Saim Ayub for now, I mean, having Imam dropped permanently is going to hurt his career and even his mindset for the rest of his career. So, and also understanding how Ahmed Shahzad is actually, you know, coming up and performing not only in the domestic circuit but also in the practice match, you need to start giving value to the merit as well. So as long as the players are being dropped from the team and they start performing, they could be even, you know, brought back into the team. That should be re-established. This should be rehabilitated. That's actually eases the pain, it eases the pressure of the player who's actually made it to the top 11, that if they dropped, if they were to get dropped, they would never make into the top playing 11 again. So you need to start reviving through the management process. You need to start bringing in players who started performing in the domestic circuit, so they make their way back into the team. You do not only need to bring in new players, new faces all the time. You need to bring in players who've been dropped, started performing in the domestic circuit, bring them back into the playing 11, so the circuit keeps, the loops keep playing on. That is actually something that eases the pain and that eases the pressure off of the player as well. So I think that is something that needs to be particularly done in order to re-establish that.
Saad mentions an important point, because this has been a problem with the Pakistan team. I mean, the biggest problem is that when a player is dropped actually or given rest on the bench, I mean, just give him some relaxation so he can just think about what wrong I have been doing on, give a chance to the new guy. It actually shows a different face. It's that the player has been dropped off, his cricket career might be finished off, because we don't have a proper setup that he goes back to the domestic structure and he performs well in that and comes back to the Pakistan team. But if you look at about Imamul Haq or the players who have been consistently performing in the domestic structure, the biggest gap, what I feel, is that you don't have the Pakistan A2s in between to fill that shoes between Pakistan domestic and Pakistan. That hurts you the most.
Well, you need to have A2s, but end of the day, if somebody gets dropped due to form or fitness or whatever reason, then he needs to go back to first class cricket. The problem with our players is, are that they're not going back to first class cricket. They prefer playing leagues, T20 cricket, which does not do justice to their fitness, does not develop their game. It's just about making money. I mean, you look at Mohammad Hafiz and Shoaib Malik, how many comebacks did they make? I think about more than 10 each. Every time they got dropped, they came back, because I'm not a fan of Shoaib Malik, I'm not a fan of Hafiz, but they went back to domestic cricket, sorted themselves out, got runs, came back in. Right now, Shaheen Afridi has played 9 first-class games. He's got 25 test matches, or 20-odd, but only 9 first-class games if you take the test matches out. So every time he's out of injury, he's, you know, either going with the New Zealand team for rehabilitation or something like that. So how is he going to develop his game? Similarly, Haris Rauf hasn't played any first-class cricket at all. He's just playing, he prefers, you know, T20 to Australia and all that. Until and unless you go back to first-class cricket, I mean, I agree with Saad, there has to be a mechanism, but the mechanism is very, very clear. You go back to your domestic structure, get runs, get wickets, and come back into the team like Ahmed Shahzad has done for now. Although I'm also not a big fan of Ahmed Shahzad, but he has you know, proven a point that yes, you go back. Umar Akmal had 4 or 5 comebacks. So these people need to go back and to first-class cricket, and that's the only way.
It must be, because even I have been speaking about the first-class cricket. I mean, what the first-class cricket actually does, what is the standard of a first-class cricket? It's important in the grooming of a cricketer who's actually going to represent Pakistan. But unfortunately, if you just look at the clause, I mean, where it's mentioned when you're playing for Pakistan that you need to play your first-class cricket, it's mandatory, but unfortunately it has never been implemented.
I mean, listen, a lot of things are being changed right now in terms of how many players can play first class cricket, how players can only play two leagues and then focus on first class cricket. So I guess if you're not the Indian Cricket Board, then you're always going to have an issue balancing the finances, because unless you're earning 20, 30, 40,000 or $1 million on the IPL, every player is going to look out for themselves and they would want to earn money. I mean, one model that has come into my mind is if you like give 70, 80% of the revenue to players who are playing test cricket and the rest to those players who are playing T20 and one day, something can come up, but that's probably a reason why I don't have a degree in finance. But yeah, other than that, I think listen, like I think we mentioned first class. If a batsman is dropped, whether he's dropped for Australia or England or India, batsmen don't really need as much rest as fast bowlers do, right? It is what it is. So Imam Ulaq, if he does get dropped right now, even if he goes back to first class cricket, I don't see him coming back, because over the last 2 years, you look at Imam's fitness, it's gone haywire. You look at Imam's form, it's gone bad because of the fact that his body is not structured in a certain way. He's not good at playing the pull shot. So you look at Imam Ulaq and you realize that the only person who has affected his career is he himself over the last 2 years. And I would like to say the same about Babar as well, but obviously Babar does carry a bit of mojo with him, which is going to keep him in cricket for another 1 or 2 years. The fitness is absolutely, it's shameful for both of those players. And when a player over 2 years just gets complacent, does not score runs, keeps on getting unfit, does not, I mean, there's no yo-yo test in Pakistan at the moment, I believe. So I don't see these batsmen getting dropped from the team coming back. However, yes, if there is a bowler and you're resting that bowler, you need to give that bowler confidence that we're just keeping you away from the team so you can go back to first class cricket, maybe focus on your action, focus on your pace, and then come back to the team. So fast bowlers have to be managed separately, batsmen separately. And this is something that Pat Cummins has done. Mitchell Stark the other day was saying that the only thing Pat Cummins has been able to implement is he empathizes a lot more with fast bowlers. And especially nowadays when there are 3 different formats being played, you need to look after your fast bowler, keep a pool of 6, 7 players, and then exactly tell them what their role is, whether it's Khurram Shahzad, whether it's Shaheen Afridi. But for batsmen, yeah, I think you should just adopt the standard, which is worldwide, that if you're playing, you're playing. If you're not, go back to domestic cricket. I mean, whether you're Matt Renshaw or whichever other player in the Australian team, once they went back, they never came back. Marcus Harris is one who's not making his way back into the team because David Warner is officially retiring. So there's no excuse for batsmen nowadays. But yeah, all the more sympathy as well as empathy for the fast bowlers.
Rightly pointed by Ali Abbas, because I mean, there's one more thing. The biggest problem what Pakistan cricket team now needs to focus on is about your workload management, because you've got the World Cup coming up, you've got the Pakistan Super League, you've got the series coming, and I would like to discuss with my guest, but I need to take a short break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Sports Extra on PT World. Usman bhai, the workload management is one of the things which I've been discussing on and emphasizing on, because you have got the World T20 coming up, you got the Pakistan Super League coming up, you got the England series, you got the Irish series, you got the New Zealand coming up. So your fast bowler specifically, what Ali was mentioning on, it's really important how you manage the workload especially.
Yeah, Ali was talking about something very important. I think he has his right to that point, but I think what Rizwan bhai was talking about, I agree with him more. See, there is a lot of difference between the experiences we are talking about. If someone is playing only 9 first-class matches and more test matches than first-class matches, that tells a lot about the planning. Okay, we agree that you have to include the faster bowlers into the international arena as quickly as possible, because they are ripe and they're faster when they are young and they can grow into the international cricket. But something that we Pakistanis have a problem with is that we manage our workload by not playing domestic cricket, rather than managing our workload by dropping or resting our players, our senior players, and giving some youngsters the chance to groom themselves, to develop their game and to strengthen our bench as well. But that doesn't happen, and that has to start from the very next tour of New Zealand, I think. That is my opinion. I think Test cricket should be respected a lot, and with the World Test Championship on the horizon, I think you have to give much more respect to Test cricket. That is where you develop a player. I think a Test match player, whether he's a bowler or a batsman, can do pretty well in ODIs and T20s as well, but it cannot be the other way around. So once you're having T20s and you're talking about the planning, I would like to provide a point here. Muhammad Haris, who was something the foreign media is talking about, should be the linchpin of this Pakistan T20 side, has been dropped or rested. And we are talking about Ahmad Shahzad making a comeback and joining the team. So there are some of these so-called standards which are very difficult to comprehend what Pakistan Cricket Board is thinking about. So there has to be some consistency. If someone is being dropped, I completely agree that if someone is rested, it is thought that he has been dropped, his career might be in question, his future might be questionable now. That shouldn't be happening. I think the management has to be very clear about the role of a player and the career planning of a player, to be very, very precise and very clear, so that there is no gap between the understanding between the player and the management. That gives a lot of boost to the player as well, and what the expectations are from him. The roles have to be defined and clear, and they should know that which games they are going to be playing and which games they are going to be, or tours they are going to be rested. And this can create a lot of confidence and group harmony as well. So the new players can also be welcomed, and the senior players may be respected, and that can bring a good atmosphere in the team, and the team can perform pretty well in the coming few months as well. So there shouldn't be much of a problem regarding resting and managing the players.
There has been a lot of criticism, I would say, especially in your opening department. And if you just talk about the workload management, it's one of the topics that it really needs to be understandable by the Pakistan Cricket Board, any cricket fraternity, because they really need to work load, especially your fast bowlers, because when you have the big tournaments coming up, what has happened with Afghanistan, what has happened with the other teams, it's an example what they have set over there. But Sadbhai, if you talk about the batting order, especially your middle order, I need to discuss about Shan Masood's captaincy. He's one of the captains now, what I feel, looks more comfortable. I didn't see a fatigue or any pressure carrying on him. With the batting, what we have been speaking about the intent, what he needs to show against Australia. He has been doing that.
Fitness is number one, and you could see by Shan Masood's playing ability, the style of his batting, and given the way that he's been scoring consistently, it shows that he is completely fit. And this is something that the team is actually lacking over the past 2 years. There hasn't been a fitness test, and they're not voluntarily done. They're demanded by the cricket board as well. So keeping that in mind, and also understanding that this is one of those reasons why you have a workload management coming up. If you even specifically talk about Shan Masood's captaincy, the players that he's going to get to captain, the players that he's going to go and lead, he needs players who are actually coming up and proving themselves to be as good as the captain performs. He's got to set the example straight, and that is something that you're going to need a lot of time, especially at least coming off with the Babar Azam's resignation, being the captain, and the power shifting hands from Babar to Shan Masood. It's obviously very chaotic. So when you try keeping that in mind, and then you see the sentiments of every player being involved, understanding how gelled up the team was under Babar at that time, you're going to see that change coming up and about after a very long time, probably a year or 2 years later. So, Shan Masood being a captain, initially I wasn't, very, very fond of the idea. I really thought that Rizwan was robbed of the idea of being the captain, but I think Shan Masood could be a better captain for Test in the limited overs. I think Rizwan has yet to learn a lot, given the fact that Shan Masood, the ton of experience he has by playing the England county as well, that actually elements a lot to that. And also understanding that the workload, as Usman Bhai was mentioning, it should be obviously coming down to the point how the cricket board communicates with the players as well. How many players, Avas, could you list on your fingers who have been retired while they were playing, as David Warner just did? They were playing in the playing 11. How many players have retired in the Pakistani cricket team? They have been dropped for so long, they knew they couldn't get back in, and they had to be retired just so they knew that there was an option going back in. That's a superior level of low professionalism being shown by the cricket board and the Pakistani players as well. That is something that needs to be first to be sorted out before anything that to happen. You could talk all about merit, you could talk all about anything, but the cricket board needs to set an example straight, just as how I was mentioning. Shan Masood needs to set that example straight for the players to follow him in his footsteps.
It's an important thing, like you just mentioned, because Shan Masood really needs to set an example, and you got the third test match coming up on the 3rd of January in Sydney. It's an important test match for Pakistan. Hope the Pakistan team performs well. Let's move on, Rizwan Bhai, to Pakistan versus New Zealand, 5 T20 series. The camp is in Lahore, where Ahmed Shahzad, your favorite, has been performing well, I would say. You got the new captain for Pakistan. How do you see the team?
Personally, I think it's Mohammad Haris, dropping Mohammad Haris is the biggest mistake. He's a technically correct play for T20 format.
And with 149, I would say strike rate of 149.
149, yeah. Also, another fact, I mean, I think we discussed that a couple of programs back with Osman, that I'm not a fan of Azam Khan. Whatever it is, unless and until he has a strike rate of 200, he's not worth it in the team, because he's a liability in the field. He's about 20 runs he'll probably give about 20 runs in the field. So there's no point having somebody like that, because it just gives your fitness standards a laugh. It's a laugh, your fitness standards. If somebody like him gets into the team, it's just not worth it. On the other hand, before I go to New Zealand, I would like to say, workload management is a word which has been misused by the Pakistani management a lot. We don't even understand what workload management is. You look at India, they play about 10 to 12 test matches a year. England plays about 10 to 12 test matches a year. We play about 5 to 6 test matches a year, right? Similarly, they play about 15 to 20 ODIs in a normal year. We play about 7 or 8. We play about, I think the T20s is the only format where we play equal number of games. So for me to say, and then you don't even drop Shaheen Afridi for somebody like Netherlands. You don't drop Babar Azam and Rizwan for teams like Afghanistan or Bangladesh or Netherlands. So you're not giving the youngsters a chance. You look at India. How did Ishan Kishan get in the team? How did Shubman Gill get in the team? Because Rahul was dropped was rested. Kohli was rested. You had Hardik Pandya captaining the team. So that's how you develop a team. That's how workload management works. We don't do that. As far as for me, Pakistan versus New Zealand, I'd rather look at the result of the Sydney test first and then go into a shorter format. Shorter format gives Pakistan a better chance, because you don't have to play long innings. You have to have quick 30s does the trick for you. And our fitness levels are just good enough for that. So I think we have a good chance in that.
Ali Abbas, what do you say about the Pakistan team, which has been selected for the New Zealand series? I mean, if you just look at the camp over here, I know there has been many talks about Haris, because he's one of the batsmen who averages around 149 with a strike rate, what you need in the modern day cricket. Then you got new players included in the Pakistan T20 side.
That is one of the most absurd decisions I've seen in a long time, dropping Mohammad Haris. I mean, resting Mohammad Haris. I personally am a huge fan of Mohammad Haris. I really like what he brings to the table, and these are the kind of players that we want to focus on, that we want to invest on. We want to give them the sort of confidence where they can express themselves. And I think Mohammad Haris hasn't been given that. He was forced to bat 1 down or 2 down in the T20 World Cup, as he's the player who prefers the fielders being inside the circle. Yet he came, he performed, and played a crucial role in us reaching the final, which is unfortunately enough for most of the players in our team to have a career of 4 to 5 years. I don't know what Wahab Riaz thought. I don't know what Mohammad Hafiz thought. I hope he does find his way back, but dropping Mohammad Haris, it doesn't make any sense. And yeah, I mean, I look at the squad and I know Shaheen Afridi is traveling, but if Shaheen Afridi does play more than 2 T20 matches in the series, I would be really disappointed, because I know he would want to play all 9 games of the PSL, because that's the most important thing for our cricketers nowadays, right? And then he'll also want to play the T20s against England. So it's important. I'm actually going to look at the series in terms of how we finally implement the misused word, as Rizwan Bhai mentioned, workload management, right? So I want to see how they implement it. If they're going to play all 5 T20s, right, it doesn't make any sense. So that's something I'm focused on. Also, I mean, yeah, it's really disappointing when you do pick the likes of Azam Khan and you drop Mohammad Haris. I am an Azam Khan fan, but I don't really know how this team is trying to move forward. You bought in Saibzada Farhan, that's a good decision. At times, the justifications that have been given for this team, they're also pretty absurd. But yeah, with that being said, I mean, the test series is still around the corner, so I have not really focused too much on this T20 squad. I'm still focused on the Sydney test, but I would still pray that somehow the other Mohammad Haris before the T20 World Cup in the Caribbean and the US finds his way back to the team, because I do believe the opening slot should be reserved for him, because he is our most dynamic and fearless batsman. It's unfortunate that he's had to sacrifice his spot in Peshawar Zalmi as well as the Pakistan team, because Babar Azam was being too rigid and keeping the opening spot. So yeah, that's just probably the one disappointment which casts a shadow of my interest in this particular T20 series.
I know, I mean, many of them won't be happy with me, what I'm going to say, but I know even you might not be happy, because most of the Lahore crowd, I mean, they wanted Shaheen Afridi to captain the Pakistan side. The thing is that we need to understand one thing: captaining a league side is totally different dilemma. Captaining a team of Pakistan, especially where you really need to go through your ups and downs, you need to have a blood pressure, everything, shoot it up. It's a something else chapter over here. He's the captain now. How do you see him as captaining Pakistan?
No, it's going to be a massive challenge. I completely agree with you actually. I too feel that captaining a franchise and captaining the national team is totally different thing. Rohit Sharma might disagree with us. He has been equally successful. Okay, he did not win any tournament with India, but he has been mighty successful as far as his win-loss ratio is concerned. And for that matter, I think Shaheen Shah Afridi has to play all the T20 matches that are coming up in the national colours. He has to play because he has to get his message to the team. He has to bring forward his planning, what he's thinking about this team and taking the team forward. That would be very, very important. And for that matter, it will also tell us how this Pakistani team formation is going to be, whether Babar is going to open or not. For that reason, I think the chief selector has given a massive negative information or signal to the Pakistani fans and the Pakistan team, that is dropping Mohammad Haris. Why dropping Mohammad Haris has been such a big issue for me? That is a player who sacrifices a wicket for the good of the team has been dropped, and that tells you a lot about this Pakistani management mentality. When you don't have the stats at your back to showcase your talent, then you are in trouble. Nobody talks about his scoring 20 odd runs in 10 odd balls and how that can actually impact the outcome of the game. Rather, we all talk about how much he averages, how much runs he scores, whether it's a 50 or 40 ball. I think a 25 ball 45 is much, much better than a 40 ball 50. And that is something that the other teams have realized. Rohit Sharma, for that matter, he has a massive average in one day and T20, and look how he plays now. He has changed the whole complexion of the Indian batting lineup. Same goes with the Australians. Pakistanis are not learning that thing.
Usman bhai, you rightly pointed out. Rizwan bhai, I mean, quickly, I would say there's one more news coming up. I don't know whether if it's correct or not, that they might have some changes in the opening department. So, are you satisfied, Saim, Ayub opening up with Rizwan or with Babar Azam? Because it's a set T20 opening batsman.
I think the reason for Pakistan's losses in T20 has been the opening combination of Rizwan and Babar. But there are two very similar sort of batsmen. You need to have at least, if not both aggressors, then you need to have at least one, who can go in and just take the bowlers apart, opening bowlers apart, and that hasn't been happening. You need a comfort zone. Pakistan has been clueless batting first. They don't know how much target to put on the board. Similarly, batting second, Rizwan and Babar need a very cushy window of 160 to 180 runs where they can chase in 20 overs. Anything more than that, and they're, literally, you have one odd match versus South Africa where they won. Otherwise, Pakistan is not going to win the World Cup with Babar and Rizwan as captain. You can have both of them in the team, but they need to be at their proper respective positions, which is best for the team, not best for Babar or Rizwan.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for the views, but it's an important thing whether Pakistan actually, I know that everyone is focusing right on the third test match. I hope Pakistan makes a good change, and that test match actually Pakistan wins on, so we can just change on the history. Me and the entire team says goodbye. Catch you tomorrow. Thank you.